Hey everybody, this is the fourth here, and in this video I wanted to introduce you to phase rotation. In certain plugins this effect might be called something else, but I am most familiar with the term phase rotation. So phase rotation is a very straightforward effect. What it does is it changes the phases of every frequency in an audio signal by the same number of degrees. Usually they have a range from minus 180 degrees to plus 180 degrees, which provides you with a full 360 degrees to work with. And you can shift the phase by any value within that range. I have a very simple plugin here that I'm going to use to demonstrate phase rotation in this video. And there will be a link on the Beat School website to where you can download this plugin for free if you're interested in it. So this plugin only has one parameter, which is the phase rotation amount. And you'll see when I apply this effect to a saw wave that it works differently than the oscillator phase knob does on a synthesizer, which is something I covered in one of the previous videos. So when I adjust that oscillator phase in the synthesizer, the saw wave will still sound the same, and it will keep its sawtooth shape while just kind of moving back and forth in the oscilloscope here. So that's without any adjusting of the phase, and this is with me adjusting that phase. And you can see that it doesn't sound any different, it just kind of moves back and forth in place in the oscilloscope. And the reason this happens is because with the phase parameter on the synthesizer, I'm changing the phase of the overall waveform. But when I adjust the phase using the phase rotation plugin, the saw wave will still sound the same, but something very different will happen in the oscilloscope. And this is because rather than changing the phase of the saw waveform as a whole, I am changing the independent phases of every frequency that makes up the saw waveform by the same number of degrees, like I said before. And as you can see, doing this changes the shape of the waveform quite a bit. So that is the basic concept of this plugin. That's the basic idea of what phase rotation does. But what would you want to use it for? Well, there are a couple things I know about that you would use a phase rotation plugin for. The first would be to achieve a better phase relationship between two or more tracks in your song. Maybe you have some phasing issues going on between a couple of sounds, and other methods of correcting the phases aren't working quite as well as you would like. It's possible in this case that using a phase rotation effect, with or without some other techniques, could help you get your sounds to fit together the way you want them to, and no longer have those phase issues. Something interesting about the phase rotation effect is that if you set it to 180 degrees, it causes the same result that polarity inversion does. So here's the saw wave, here's the original saw wave. Here it is with that 180 degree phase rotation. And here it is with its polarity inverted. So you can see that the polarity inversion looks exactly the same as the 180 degree phase rotation. They're both just inverted versions of the original waveform. So that's pretty interesting. And because of this, you can use it in a similar way to polarity inversion to fix your phase problems, if you have any, but it allows you a lot more control. So this effect is definitely a powerful tool for helping to correct problems with phase relationships between multiple audio tracks that other techniques can't quite get right. And that's kind of the main use for this effect in mixing. And I will look at correcting phase issues a bit more in a later video. And phase rotation will be featured in that video, so you can see, how it can actively work in getting your phase relationships to be more favorable. But there is another use I know of for phase rotation that's kind of interesting. And there may be more uses than these two, but these are the two that I am familiar with. And this other use I know about is to help asymmetrical waveforms become more symmetrical in order to increase your available headroom and get a louder mix. If you look at the waveform of this audio sample, you'll see that it's pretty asymmetrical. It peaks a lot higher in the positive amplitude values than it does in the negative amplitude values. And you might be able to see that a bit more if I kind of record it with Edison here. So you can see, if I zoom in on it a bit, here is the center line that represents an amplitude of 0, and it peaks a lot higher in the positive than it does in the negative amplitude values. You can see that this line here represents an amplitude of 0.5, and this one here represents an amplitude of negative 0.5. And it doesn't even reach negative 0.5 for most of these peaks, but in the positive values it passes 0.5 for all of these. So the waveform is very asymmetrical. It peaks a lot higher in the positive than it does in the negative amplitude values. And with this waveform like this, if I play it again and you watch the peak meter, you can see that the highest peaks are kind of at -1 decibel for both the left and the right channel. But if I adjust the phase using this phase rotation plugin, I will be able to get it a lot more symmetrical. So I'm just going to do that right now. So you can see that I've adjusted it to be at just over 90 degrees, and as I made that adjustment, the waveform became a little bit more symmetrical. Instead of before where it was mostly above -0.5 and also above 0.5, it's now kind of peaking in a similar distance in both the positive and negative amplitude values from that, the center line, which is amplitude of 0. So just adjusting the phase with this phase rotation plugin made it a lot more symmetrical. And now if I play it again and you watch the peak meter, you can see that the highest peaks are just below -3 decibels. So that's a couple decibels of headroom that I saved by adjusting the phase with this phase rotation plugin. And because of this, I can push things a little bit louder without clipping or compression or limiting anything like that, and get a little bit louder of a mix maybe. Now, especially as a beginner, I wouldn't worry too much about trying to get things to be super loud. I would focus on getting good mixes first, and then once you have some good mixes, you can work on getting those good mixes louder by trying different things like this out to save yourself some headroom. And this is something pretty cool to know about, and it can be useful in the future. So that's pretty much it for phase rotation. Hopefully that was helpful and everything made sense. Like I said before, I will be looking into correcting phase issues more in a later video, and phase rotation will be one technique I will talk about in that video.